But Donna, would you start us off?
All right. Welcome to First Unitarian Church, where our mission is to explore the eternal, nurture community, and pursue the common good. Whoever you are, whomever you love, wherever you are on your spiritual journey, and whatever your life circumstance, you are welcome here.
We began our service today with these words from UU minister, Reverend Kendall Gibbons. When death comes suddenly, taking just one friend, or in a magnitude beyond our comprehension, and horror and in disbelief, we remember.
When bright and innocent lives are cut short without warning or mercy, in agony and outrage, we remember.
When bereavement and loss seem to be everywhere we turn, and the world goes dark in emptiness and pain, we remember.
When help and comfort must be given to the afflicted and the work of our hands is needed in duty and sacrifice, we remember.
When it feels that nothing matters and life as it once was seems distant and unreal, in sorrow and in numbness, we remember.
When grief comes upon us in waves and the helpless heart overflows, in sadness and aching tears, we remember.
When the spirit of life beckons us to lift our eyes to all that remains true and good in dedication and in trust, we remember.
When the lessons of mutual help and understanding taught by tragedy live on in us to bless the world, in love and kinship, we remember.
When we come to honor those we have lost by learning to cherish more dearly those around us, in generosity and in gratitude, we remember.
We light the chalice as a symbol of our sacred time together. The burning chalice represents the light of reason and science, the warmth of loving community, the cleansing heat of justice, and the flame of hope. And we're having a little problem. Not sure why. There we go.
Our opening hymn is Comfort Me by Mimi Bernstein. It's number 1002 in our Teal hymnal, and it will be led by Lana Henson and accompanied by Warren Palmer.
Oh
This is the story of Orpheus and Eurydice, as reimagined by me, and with illustrations that exclusively come from royalty-free stock photos. This is a very old story that was told long ago in ancient Greece, but I'm going to change the ending a bit because no story has only one possible ending. You can't see the PowerPoint? Let me try that one more time. There we go. This is the story of Orpheus and Eurydice. This is a very old story that was told long ago in ancient Greece, but I'm going to change the ending a bit because no story has only one possible ending. The story is set in a very ancient time, in a time when people believed that gods and goddesses lived on a mountaintop, in the woods, under the sea, and deep under the ground. The protagonist of this story is a man named Orpheus. Orpheus was a great musician. He played an instrument called a lyre, which is kind of like a small harp, and he enchanted everyone with his beautiful music. One person who was especially enchanted was named Eurydice. She fell deeply in love with Orpheus, and he fell in love with her too. And soon enough, they decided to get married. They were very happy. One beautiful day, Eurydice decided to take a walk through the countryside. She was having such a lovely time, but then suddenly, a snake came out of nowhere and bit her on the ankle. While most snakes aren't poisonous and do the good work of eating pesky bugs, this one was venomous. And within just a few moments, before Eurydice could make it back to say goodbye to her beloved Orpheus, she died. At that time, people believed that dead people went to a place under the earth, the underworld, and that's just where she went. Poor Orpheus was heartbroken. He was, of course, deeply sad that his beloved wife had died, but it was made even worse by the fact he'd never had a chance to say goodbye to her. For days and weeks and months, he wept and pined, and finally, he decided he couldn't go on without Eurydice by his side. He decided to do something no living human had ever done before. He decided to go down to the underworld and bring his wife back from the dead. With the help of a friend, he lowered himself down into the depths, down below the earthworms and the hidden treasure chest and the tree roots, down to the land inhabited by the dead. Now, in order to get to the place where the dead people lived, he first had to cross a river called Styx. The only way to get across was to be ferried over by a boat person named Charon, or as she preferred to pronounce it, Charon. There was a rule that only dead people could cross the river, but Orpheus played some music on his lyre, and he sang a song that was so haunting, so deeply sad, that Charon broke down in tears and said, "Okay, come on, get in the boat. I'll take you to the other side." But that wasn't the end of the challenges for Orpheus, because the gate to the underworld was guarded by a vicious three-headed dog named Cerberus. When you're limited to royalty-free stock photos, you have to take what you can get. So you have to use your imagination on this one. Cerberus growled and bared his terrible teeth. But when Orpheus began to play his lyre, the horrible hound whimpered, rolled on his back, and once Orpheus had scratched his belly for a bit, he let him pass. Soon enough, Orpheus ran into the dreadful god of death, the king of the underworld, Hades. Hades shrieked at him, "Living human, what are you doing here among the dead? Leave immediately or you will be dead." But just then, Hades' wife, Persephone, appeared and reasoned with Hades. "Let's hear what he has to say," she said. Wisely, instead of just telling his story, Orpheus sang it. And when the dead people heard Orpheus's music, they totally started clapping and singing along and jumping around. And when it was over, Persephone said, "That was pretty much the most beautiful song I've ever heard. As far as I'm concerned, you deserve to take Eurydice back." But Hades was kind of a grumpy old skeleton guy with an attitude. So he said, "Only if he can make it all the way to the light without ever looking at her or touching her or even checking to make sure she's really there." Orpheus said, "Deal." So Hades showed Orpheus the way out of the land of the dead, into the light of the world of the living. The whole time, Orpheus knew that Eurydice was nearby, but he couldn't see her. He couldn't touch her. He couldn't smell her. And that feeling that she was there but not there, it was finally more than he could take. And just as they were approaching the light of day, Orpheus turned around and looked. And guess what happened? Hades had been true to his word. Eurydice had been there all along. But now, because Orpheus hadn't believed, because he hadn't been able to wait, Eurydice was snatched back to the underworld, and this time she would never be able to leave. At least, as she was being pulled back, she was able to cry out, "Orpheus, I love you." Well, as you might imagine, Orpheus was more heartbroken now than even before. He fell into a grief so deep that he forgot how to smile. And in the original myth, this is where the story ends. Well, actually, it ends with Orpheus just giving up on living and dying in a terrible way. But just because some ancient Greeks decided to end it like that doesn't mean we have to. So here is an alternative ending. Orpheus was sad. He was terribly sad for a very long time. It was only natural because he missed Eurydice so badly. For a long time, he cried so much that he was unable to play his instrument, unable to sing through his tears. But one day, something blossomed within his heart. Something within him said, "Orpheus, look around. You're not still in the underworld. You're here in the world. You're alive." Well, at first, Orpheus felt he couldn't go on living if his beloved Eurydice was dead, that it would somehow be a kind of betrayal. But over time, he realized, just because I go on doesn't mean that I have to forget my true love. She will always live in my heart. She will always live in my music. And when I share that music with others, it will be like bringing her smile back into the world. And so Orpheus played his music again, and he touched the hearts of many. And this time, it was the living who sang along and jumped around and danced. The end. Our worship associate today is LaDonna Hunt. I'm so happy that she could be with us this morning. LaDonna is also the chair of our lay pastoral care group called the Befrienders. Take it away, LaDonna.
All right. A couple of weeks ago, Reverend Diana contacted me about being the worship associate for today. And she said that the service would focus on pastoral care and would deal with ambiguous losses. She suggested a video to watch, so before I accepted the mission, it seemed important I watch the video. As I listened to Dr. Pauline Boss explain the idea of ambiguous losses, much to my surprise, the song, "Jesus, Take the Wheel," sung by Carrie Underwood, came to mind. My first thought was, where in the world did that come from? that song and the theology behind it is really not my forte, but there it was, and it just stayed there. So after listening to the video, I looked up the lyrics of the song. The lyrics tell the story of a young lady traveling to Cincinnati to visit her parents on a cold, snowy Christmas Eve night with her baby in the back seat. She was, as the lyrics say, low on gasoline and low on faith and driving too fast when she hit a sheet of black ice and the car was spinning out of control. As the car spun out of control, she threw up her hands in the air and asked Jesus to take the wheel. In March of 2020, we were traveling fast. We were shopping, planning meetings and events, attending meetings, going to work, taking our children to school, going on vacations, enjoying family gatherings, attending church, when suddenly our world and our lives hit a sheet of black ice called COVID-19. It seemed everything in our lives went into a tailspin. And for many of us, we feel we have been spinning out of control ever since. I understand when a car is spinning out of control, the worst thing we can do is step on the brake in an attempt to bring the car under control. I am told stepping on the brake usually makes everything worse. For many of us, we keep looking for a brake to step on in an attempt to get our lives, our existence under control. We are now wearing masks when we dare to go out. Our world has become a world of eyes. For me, I watch people's faces and look for smiles and acknowledgement. I recently visited with a lady living in an assisted living center. She told me she hates to go out in the halls where she lives because everyone just looks at her. I asked if everyone was wearing masks, to which she replied yes. I suggested that perhaps the reason everyone just looks at her was because that is all she can see of a person's face. I really miss seeing faces. I miss the hugs from my grandchildren and grandchildren and great-grandchildren. I haven't had a hug from my grandkids or my children for months. I miss going to my granddaughter's wedding without the fear of being exposed to the virus. I missed attending our granddaughter's college graduation ceremony that never happened. We had been looking forward to that for 5 years. I missed the Easter egg hunt at our house, even for our grandkids who are no longer little children. I missed the Mother's Day and Father's Day gatherings. I miss going to church and our after-church lunch at Louis. I miss our monthly coffee meetings in our neighborhood. I miss feeling secure and knowing my grandchildren will not be able to attend school without the fear of getting sick. And you know what? There is not one thing I can do about those misses. I just look for the break and there is none. I just keep spinning. The Befrienders meet monthly and review how we can best meet the needs of our congregation. We discuss how we can be of assistance with the obvious needs of members. Those who are sick, those who are facing difficult situations with their health, those who may be facing surgeries. We do our best to make sure how we can be of most help. Do members need food? Do they need transportation? Shall we send cards, visits at the residence, visits in the hospital? In this situation, every one of us are dealing with losses. I really miss giving a hug to my grandchildren, but no one can bring a dish of food over and help me heal from that loss. If we are honest, we are all hurting, and it's difficult to know how to be of assistance. For me, I do my best to set aside those losses, to put them out of my line of focus. Accept the truth, I cannot do anything about the losses. There is no break, and do my best to stay healthy, to do my best to keep my family safe and live one day at a time. Each day I attempt to remember what day of the week it is, a fixed breakfast, and attempt to enjoy this beautiful world. Someone has said that the best 5 words in the Bible are, "and it came to pass." Remember in the song, Jesus Take the Wheel, when the car finally stopped spinning, the baby in the back seat was sleeping like a rock.
Thanks, LaDonna. Every Sunday, we take an offering. Since 2002, all the cash and designated checks from that offering have gone directly to external nonprofit organizations doing good work in our community, our Change for Change partners. This month, our Change for Change partner is Black Lives Matter Oklahoma City. Black Lives Matter Oklahoma City is an extension of the global Black Lives Matter movement. Their mission is to highlight racial disparities, injustices, and advocate for racial equality. At this point, I'll play some music and I'll give you all some time to make your donation to our special Change for Change. You may wish to make your donation using a credit card through our website, or this could be a good time to find your checkbook, write out a check, and put it aside to mail to First Unitarian tomorrow morning. Let today's offering reflect our highest aspirations for the work of this church in the world. The video I'm going to show you, it's very short. It's from The Work of the People, and it features a poem by Rainer Maria Rilke called Live the Questions. Thank you, Chris. It's so good to know I've got somebody who's got my back here. Please join me in a spirit of prayer or meditation. Spirit of life, we are living in a time of so much pain and loss that sometimes it seems as though the well of tears will overflow into a flood. May we have the strength to live into this moment, into this life, even if it is painful. At this time, I'm going to try to open up my chat, and I invite you to scan your heart and to find the heaviness in it. Maybe your heart aches for someone you miss terribly. Maybe it aches for someone else who is hurting, who is in need of love and healing. Whatever it is that fills your well of tears, you're welcome to share that in the chat now. I'll try to also see what's going on Facebook, and I apologize in advance if I don't see all of your comments. Just be assured they're being lifted up in the sacred space. As represented by these pebbles, we put our burdens into this well of tears. We weep for the grandmother that we're not able to see. We weep for the person experiencing a breakup. We weep for the people of Beirut and all of those who are lost. We weep for an uncle and his family who is now entering hospice care. We weep for a precious mother, Barbara Webster, who is safe and protected in her memory care residence, but has not been able to physically be with her family. All of the kids who are going back to school with masks and fear and social distancing goes against their very nature as kids, and the kids who are going back to school online, who are lonely and isolated. We drop into our well of tears the memory of a friend whose daughter committed suicide. We remember an English family who were supposed to, we remember Fran's family, who she was supposed to see in May and who she doesn't know when she'll be able to see again. For all these and for many more, we remember that tears wash our eyes clean, just as rain waters the earth. May these tears bring healing. And even as we know that in the hardest time, there is still joy that can be found, I invite you to put into the chat now those things for which you are thankful. For socially distanced walking friends, we drop petals into the water. For nature, for this congregation, for being okay financially, for being able to be with a son or daughter and a new granddaughter, for family, for the health of the family, for children, for being in a safe place, for a week-long camping trip with parents, for physical needs being met, for a son, for Zoom, for Facebook, the fact that we can see those people that we miss so terribly, for these services, for FaceTime with grandchildren, for all of these things and so many more, we drop petals onto the surface of the water. Our joy and our hope floats upon the waters. Let's take just a moment in silence and hold all of these things in our hearts. Blessed be. Amen. Our anthem is a song by Peter Mayer called Japanese Bowl, and it's being sung by our own Lana Henson and accompanied by Warren Palmer. In the middle of the journey of our life, I find myself within a dark woods where the straight way has been lost. That's a quote from the Divine Comedy, written by the medieval Italian poet Dante Alighieri. In the Divine Comedy, Dante tells the story of a journey through the deepest pits of hell, through purgatory, to the highest realms of heaven. And along the way, he describes limbo as a region on the edge of hell that is reserved for those who lived a good life, but couldn't quite make the grade to get into heaven. An in-between place, a liminal space, full of unbaptized babies and well-meaning but not yet Christian pagan sages and scholars like Homer and Ovid, Aristotle and Socrates. Limbo is a state of being where life goes on day after day after day into infinity. Oddly, besides actual historical figures from antiquity, Dante includes the mythical Orpheus among the inhabitants of Limbo. Why is he there? Because he is a great poet like Dante, and maybe because it just makes sense. Because the mythological story of Orpheus and Eurydice ends with the poet unable to forgive himself for the loss of his wife, unable to remember how to live, locked in some in-between place, between the land of the living and the land of the dead, until he is finally, literally, torn apart. I find myself understanding Orpheus all too well these days. I'm the child of scientists, and I'm someone who believes that ultimate meaning lies entirely within natural processes. And yet, I have to admit, I have a superstitious streak. Around the end of March, when the safer at home mandated social distancing rules went into effect in Oklahoma, I experienced a kind of miracle. I had one of those LED candles, the kind that you turn on and off with a switch, in my bathroom. And it probably landed there during one of our spring storms when the electricity went out. Anyway, Soon after we all went into quarantine, maybe even the very next day, I noticed that the candle was on. I tried to turn it off, but it was stuck. Oh well, I thought, let it go until the battery just wears out. But the next morning, hello, the candle was still lit. And the day after that, and the day after that. And after about a week of this, I began to think, is this some kind of COVID miracle? How long will this AA battery last? 2 weeks went by with this little LED candle greeting me, shining every morning. And I started to wonder, will this last through the pandemic? And then, should I be posting about this on Facebook? Thankfully, I had enough common sense to say, no, don't do that. But after weeks of thinking I was witnessing some kind of small miracle, I started to take it for granted. The lit candle just became a thing that I saw every day, much less miraculous or wondrous than finding toilet paper at Target, or coming across a stash of hand sanitizer in the bottom of a forgotten drawer. And then one day, the candle went out. No flickering little light greeted me as I went to brush my teeth in the morning. And that, for me, was when I realized that this pandemic would not be a short-term thing, a blip, a break in our regularly scheduled programming. This virus would outlive any AA battery, even a miraculous one. For me, that was the moment in the dark woods where the straight way was lost. Soon after the candle went out, I learned that someone I had met at a Christmas party had died of COVID. And then it was a colleague who I thought was made out of salt and stone, who was invincible, but it turned out she was not. And then people I cared about started testing positive, and other people began losing their jobs and their health care. And the miracle of the battery that wouldn't die became a distant memory. What took its place was your stories of weddings and memorial services indefinitely postponed. Stories about loved ones sick or dying in other states or countries who can only be held virtually through the medium of a computer screen. Stories about solitary hospital stays with no visitors allowed. Stories about graduations and other milestones that can only be celebrated virtually. Stories about friends, children, and grandchildren who might be local, even blocks away, but who can't be visited, can't be touched. Stories about dear friends retiring or moving away who couldn't have a proper goodbye party. Stories about elders who are losing contact with the outside world and who are slipping away from us a day at a time. These are stories of ambiguous loss. Psychologist and family therapist Pauline Boss coined this phrase back in the 1970s. She first used the term to describe the experience of children who had a person go missing in war, or even just a parent who was to work. Since then, the term has been used to describe the particular pain that people experience when a loved one dies in a disaster that leaves no body, or in reverse, the experience of losing a loved one to dementia or addiction, in which the body remains, but the mind, the spirit, the person we knew and loved seems to disappear. Ambiguous loss describes a kind of loss in which closure or resolution is made difficult, maybe impossible. This might include divorce, miscarriage or infertility, immigration, incarceration, or sudden emotional detachment. Any experience in which someone who was beloved, who was a part of our lives, is no longer there, And yet there are no clear cultural rituals or markers to honor this loss. Ambiguous loss is the experience of parting with a piece of our heart without the chance to say goodbye. In normal times, only some of us experience ambiguous loss, but today it is a shared experience. The symptoms of ambiguous loss include hopelessness, racing thoughts, general anxiety, anger and irritability, confusion, constant worry or preoccupation about the well-being of loved ones, indecisiveness, emotional overwhelm, and insomnia. And I don't know about you, but there are days when I think the most honest response to the question, "How are you?" would be a verbatim reading of this list. So we are living in a state of ambiguous loss. But so what? What can we do about it? Well, we can name it, recognize that people who are in a state of ambiguous loss don't know what to do with their grief. And it may come out in any number of strange ways, as grumpiness, lethargy, absent-mindedness, nastiness, hyperactivity, self-blaming, even self-loathing. So be kind. Second, we can honor it. We don't need to hold on to our grief until we can have those funerals and memorial services again. We don't need to remain in a state of grief limbo until we can formally acknowledge as a people all of this unnecessary death and loss all around us. We can take time to grieve now, time to cry, to ugly cry. I'm talking the red eyes and the runny nose and the whimpering. Just let it all be. Third, we can take some advice from the ancient story of Orpheus and Eurydice. Don't look back. The pandemic has taken things from all of us. Some of those things still need to be mourned. But there are other things that we can safely say good riddance to without a second glance. I've shared this quote from Indian author Arundhati Roy before, but it's worth repeating. She suggests that we can see the pandemic as, quote, a portal, a gateway between one world and the next. We can choose to walk through it, dragging the carcasses of our prejudice and hatred, our avarice, our databanks and dead ideas, our dead rivers and smoky skies behind us. Or we can walk through lightly with little luggage, ready to imagine another world and ready to fight for it, unquote. And finally, even though I recognize that the classic sermon includes 3 main points, I'm going to give you a 4th one, a bonus, kind of like that extra grapefruit knife that you get when you buy the whole knife set. And here it is. In the story of Orpheus and Eurydice, Hades warns Orpheus that he must trust that Eurydice is there with him. He mustn't look at her until they both reach the surface. But for Orpheus, it is too much. This sense of having his loved one within reach and yet not being able to touch her, hold her, look directly into her eyes, into her whole face. So he turns around and he reaches out, and in doing so, he loses Eurydice forever. As we enter this 5th month of physical distancing, the temptation to get together with friends and extended family, to get up close to them and hug them and laugh with them and see their whole faces can be overwhelming. And yet we know that it is gatherings of friends and extended family at parties, funerals, church services, that make for one of the best ways for the virus to spread. All of us must make our own decisions. And short of complete isolation, we all take calculated risks. But by reaching out to others too soon, before we've made our way to the end of this dark path we're on, we may lose them. Here on this journey of our life, we find ourselves in a dark wood with no straight path. But we must believe that there is a way out and that others are on this path with us. We may not be able to see them or touch them, but they are there. A candle goes out and another one is lit. And we keep climbing up into the light, even as we know that the light is already within us. Our closing music today is I Am Light by India Ari, and it's sung by our own beloved Denise Chambers. I apologize for the sound quality. This was recorded in a simple cell phone without video. So I was able to go out and find a video loop produced again by the work of the people, and Jim was able to match the two together. So this is I Am Light, sung by Denise Chambers.
The things my family did. I am not the voices in my head. I am not the pieces of the brokenness inside. I am light. I am light. I am light. I am light. I am light, I am light. I am light, I am light. I am light, I am light. I am not the mistakes that I have made, or any of the things that cause me pain. I am not the pieces of the dream I left behind. I am light. I am light. I am light. I am light. I am light, I am light. I am light, I am light. I am not the color of my eyes. I am not the skin on the outside. I am not my age. I am not my race. My soul inside is all light, all light, all light.
We extinguish this flame, but not the light of love and community which burns in our hearts.
I leave you with this blessing. It is again the words of the poet Rilke. Be patient toward all that is unsolved in your heart and try to love the questions themselves, like locked rooms and like books that are now written in a very foreign tongue. Do not now seek the answers which cannot be given you because you would not be able to live them. And the point is to live everything. Live the questions now. Perhaps you will then gradually, without noticing it, live along some distant day into the answer. Blessings on everyone. And just a reminder that we'll take a little break here, about 5 minutes or so, and come back for coffee hour. So please join us then. Be well, be safe, everyone. Blessed be. Bye.